Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Brothers Discuss. I am Alex,
And I'm Chris.
and today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're, of course, recording this about a week before Spider-Man No Way Home is released in theaters around the world, and we just thought we just talk about what we can potentially expect, our sort of expectations, maybe predictions. So, yeah, so I guess the big question I have for you right off the bat is, do you think this film can redeem Tom Holland's Spider-Man?
Um, no, but okay. Going into this, compared to especially Far From Home here, I mean, Homecoming had looked promising from the trailers and everything, but uh, going into Far From Home, I was like, I have no faith in where this character can go, and I I appreciate that they're just now starting to course correct a little bit, but this is 5 years after this character has been introduced, and it's just now starting to take itself more seriously, and trying to get what Spider-Man is all about. And I mean, that's just based off of trailers, but I mean, I appreciate the effort, but that is just too little, too late.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we did do our discussion of Homecoming. How long has it been now? It's been a while, but
It's been a little bit, yeah.
yeah, we haven't done a video in a while. But so we've yet to talk about Far From Home in depth. I'm not going to try to get too in depth with Far From Home, but yeah, my problems with this Spider-Man franchise. I mean, there's quite a few, but they're all kind of interconnected in a way. The biggest thing is still like just the lack of consequences and tension in these
Yeah,
films.
that's the big one.
Yeah, like I mean, Far From Home, it ends with Peter's identity being revealed by J. Jonah Jameson, and it just feels like a weird twist because there are no secret identities in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it just felt like
Right.
a weird reveal. And it harkens back to Aunt May's the ending of Homecoming, where Aunt May discovers that Peter is Spider-Man, where it
Yeah,
should have been just this huge, like, dramatic moment, but it was just played off as a joke at the end. And
right.
I hope in No Way Home that we get some sort of tension, but given the fact that it's still the same creative team, still the same writers,
Yeah.
I'm not willing to bet that we're gonna get that.
I
But there's potential though. There
I think
is.
we are. I think
Mm-hmm.
like some people are actually going to die in this. And I think it's pretty obvious who it is just based off the trailers. But yeah,
All right.
I
Well,
don't know if you want to get into that soon or
we
whatever, but
can.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get into that. Um, but then that leads into another problem I have, which is Aunt May. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is what you had in mind of what you think is going to bite the dust, but Aunt May is kind of problematic
And
to me.
yes. Yeah, she's not, I mean, we don't really see, like, I could count on one hand how many shots in the trailers she's been in. She's I don't think she's making it out of this one. Um, I'll go. You want me to go ahead and tell my other prediction?
Sure, go ahead.
Happy. I think he's gone too.
Okay.
Yeah. Because like there is like one. There's only like this one shot of Happy like in the car, and he's like surrounded by a SWAT team. And then in the recent trailer where like the villains kind of got a little bit more, screen time basically in the trailers. There's the pumpkin bomb that Peter tries to catch, and it looks
Hmm.
like it blows up a car.
Okay.
So I think Happy's also a goner in this one.
Gotcha. All right. Um, but here's the thing with Aunt May, and a problem I've consistently had with her since they've introduced her is that she's just been portrayed as just. I mean, obviously, she's much younger than the previous Aunt Mays, but my
Sure.
problem is that the characters in the movies themselves make a big deal that, oh, she's hot, when it doesn't
Yeah,
make
that's
sense. if people don't know that she's not normally meant to be this young and attractive, it's just
Right.
so bizarre. I don't like it one
That,
bit.
that's been the running gag for every single time she's on screen is look how hot she is. You
I
can't
don't like it.
you literally cannot miss the point anymore of Aunt May. It's not supposed to be a joke that you're not. This is especially apparent in Far From Home. Literally every single one of her scenes is a joke about how hot she is. Homecoming at least tried to have little moments here and there with Aunt May and Peter, but like it's not. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I've not watched Far From Home since the theater. Like
Yeah.
I've not been inclined to watch it since then. But that's the thing. It's like one of my favorite, not just to bring up the comics constantly, but with Aunt May, one of my favorite Aunt May stories is in the J. Michael Straczynski run, where they do the story where she finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. And there's just one issue where it's a really somber issue where it's just a conversation between Aunt May and Peter. There's no action. There's hardly any Spider-Man in it. And it's a really, really good story. And
Yeah.
I was hoping we could potentially get something like that. But
You're
we
never going to get
did.
something like that in this universe. You're never going to get something like that.
And it's such a huge
You're never.
shame.
It's we've had all right. Tobey Maguire, Rosemary Harris, like the scene where Peter tells Aunt May like the truth about what happened to Uncle Ben. You're never going to get something like that in this series. It's just never going to happen.
No. And I guess speaking of Uncle Ben, that's another problem I've been having with this series so far. Just the utter lack of Uncle Ben. Or not even an acknowledgement. Like, I mean, you can go like the PS4 route, like where Uncle Ben is not integral to the plot of the game, but
Right.
it's very clear that he's important to the mythos.
Right, exactly.
Like just something, just
some mention of him that's not like in a zombie apocalypse episode of What If.
Or his suitcase.
Or his suitcase. Yeah, that's not enough. Something that like acknowledges why he's Spider-Man, directly connecting to Uncle Ben, not just because, you know, bad stuff happens and it's your fault. Like, that's good for Civil War because that's not his movie. But, you know, going into solo stuff, okay, now go deeper into why you're Spider-Man. But
and that's the other problem. Because we don't get an acknowledgement of Uncle Ben, we're just meant to think that Tony Stark is the proper father figure for Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Which, again, because Spider-Man's in the MCU and it's Sony, like, it just feels like it's just constant reminders that Spider-Man is in the MCU without trying to push Tom Holland's Spider-Man forward. That's problematic to me.
Yeah.
And just one minor problem. It's not the biggest problem, but it's just Peter's supporting cast. I don't like many of these characters. I mean,
all right, you're doing characters a disservice. These are not characters. they are cardboard cutouts with names we know. There's nothing about them that makes them a character.
Yeah, and like I know in Far From Home they tried to develop a relationship between Peter and MJ, and they're cute together. They have good chemistry, but it just doesn't do anything for me.
It doesn't do anything because none of that is set up in Homecoming.
No.
And then Far From Home, right off the bat, like Peter's first scene is how he's going to win MJ over.
It's like, where did this come from?
Exactly. It's so underdeveloped.
So with all that being said, what do you think can be done to fix all the problems that we've been having in No Way Home?
Well, one thing that, like, unironically that I actually really like is that Peter is, based off the trailers, which, you know, they're Sony trailers, take them for what you will, but like based off the trailers, like Peter's definitely taking a lot more responsibility and trying to keep these villains that all die. I'm doing quotes, by the way, for the listeners. The villains that all die fighting Spider-Man. Just trying to keep them alive and give them a second chance. That feels more Spider-Man to me than we've gotten in recent years with this character.
I agree. I'm glad that this seems to be a Tom Holland centric film for one. So like it feels like, yeah, this is a Spider-Man or a Peter Parker that I recognize. Now I'm going to
Yeah.
get into some problems I have later in a bit, but
Right.
some things I feel like you can fix the previous problems I've had. There's really 3 steps you can take. Step number
Okay.
1, don't mention Tony Stark at all. Nothing. Don't even acknowledge him. Don't name drop
But
him.
well, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and you know it.
But that's what I'm saying. Don't do it. Step number 2, take away all Stark tech. Have Doc Ock completely shred the shit out of the Iron Spider suit so we never have to see it again.
It's not going to happen.
Make it happen. I want
It's
it to
not
happen.
going to happen. Electro's going to get an arc reactor, and he's going to become
Oh,
ultra
no.
powerful.
No. And okay, and step number 3, and this is probably more likely going to happen. Do a complete tone shift from the previous 2 films.
We still have bad jokes in the trailers, but it's toned down considerably. Whereas like Far From Home is just nothing but jokes. So like these moments that are supposed to have a bigger impact, like everyone finding out Peter's Spider-Man, it doesn't really matter because this is like the first time the movie's actually treating itself seriously.
Yeah.
But you still have jokes in this movie. It's just, it definitely has a more serious tone, which I'm glad. But again, this is the 3rd movie.
Yeah, and Homecoming had potential to be like, okay, you could be a smaller scale movie, like small stakes, everything. You could still have that and be a fun movie with a heartfelt sincerity that goes along with Spider-Man stories. They didn't have that, of course. But you had potential to do that. Far From Home is just like 90% fun, and then like only towards the end do you get like the more like serious stakes with like the Mysterio confrontation on the bridge. Like the only time we felt like there was real potential there with that is Homecoming's final act, which is still quite good in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's for the most part.
So I think having a complete tone shift in this film, I think is the right call. Like go dark, like do something. Like I want to feel something.
And that definitely seems to be more of the case this time around. Yeah,
like have like a major death in the first act or something. Like kill Aunt May or Happy or Ned, whatever. Do something. Or even like if it's true and we're getting Charlie Cox's Daredevil in this, like bring some of that Netflix grit into this.
Yeah.
So now with the trailers all come out, here's what we can sort of pinpoint. Peter and Mary Jane, it looks like they're still a cute couple. There's not much more to it than that.
Right.
Maybe she dies. Maybe she doesn't. Who knows?
She won't die. I don't think that's happening.
Well, but then here's the other thing. So obviously we should get some potential with Peter's identity being out for the world to know. There should be some high stakes there, but from the trailers, it looks like the only thing I gather is that it looks like Peter's just annoyed by big crowds. Like it's like a TMZ, like TMZ is going after like a canceled celebrity or something.
Yeah.
Or like imagine like those reporters going after like Tom McGuire in the car. Like something like that. I can't see.
That to me is kind of like the biggest bummer is that Peter's identity being, revealed to the world, that's really only used to jumpstart the plot, just from the looks of it. It looks like the main focus is going into the multiverse and bringing back these characters from other franchises.
Yeah.
And everything with Peter's identity is kind of left to the side. It's just there to get things going.
Exactly. But before I get into that, I do want to mention one positive I do have from the trailers is that so far there's been no mention of Tony Stark. So there.
So far, yeah.
So far.
That's been good.
So far, so good. But now on to the big thing.
Go ahead.
The multiverse.
Oh, boy.
So I was hoping for this film with what happens in the end of Far From Home to be a darker Spider-Man story where Tom Holland, it's a Tom Holland-centric story, but instead we're getting potentially the other Spider-Man, which at this point, I think it's quite confirmed that Tobey and Andrew are in this.
Yeah.
So the question is, how does the multiverse really fit into Tom Holland's story? And will this give Tom like a good proper focus?
The answer to that is money, and that the multiverse and bringing back characters and people we all know will get people into the theater. It doesn't matter what happens to Tom Holland in any of this. As long as Tobey and Andrew are back and we're getting a villain from every live action Spider-Man movie that's come before Tom Holland. So, I mean, that's all that matters, really.
One final prediction I'm going to make right now, or question I should pose to you, rather. Do you think Mysterio is in this?
I was thinking about this a little bit today, and my answer is yes, but I don't think it's going to be like the Beck that was in Far From Home. I think we're getting a different Beck, like a more legitimate Mysterio.
Interesting.
Like I don't know. It's so weird because his death in Far From Home is the most pathetic death in cinematic history. I've seen characters in this universe survive things far worse than a misfire. But you know, it is what it is. But like, you have one villain from every single Spider-Man movie that's not Tom Holland's, and that's 5 movies. It's obvious they're going for Sinister Six here. I know Venom is in this universe now. I haven't seen Let There Be Carnage, but I know he's in this now.
It's that Venom Let There Be Carnage. I'm going to say this real quick. Venom Let There Be Carnage is utter garbage. That is like a trash movie. I don't like it one bit. So far, it is my least favorite like Spider-Man movie to date.
Really?
Yeah. It's worse than the first Venom movie, which says a lot.
But yeah, I know Hardy's Venom is in this now. I don't think all right, with Venom, I think he's only going to be in a post-credit scene because like
I'd say that's a safe bet.
I think what they're going to do with him is that with a Venom 3, the only thing you can do bigger than Carnage is Spider-Man. Like, you can't get a symbiote that's bigger than Carnage. You have to bite the bullet and you do Spider-Man. So you can't have them like fight in this movie. That has to be the next big thing. So I think that's what they're doing with Venom. They're going to tease him at the end.
Sure. I could see that.
Yeah.
But I just feel like Mysterio, it's Mysterio. I feel like he's going to come back.
Or could it be Vulture? We know he's in Morbius.
That's true.
But then again, everyone is in Morbius, apparently. Like,
how about Scorpion? Are they going to pay that off in From Homecoming?
Who knows?
I doubt it. I think they're just going to drop it.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean,
that is the thing. If it's obvious this is the Sinister Six and you have one missing member, you want it to be a bigger reveal. It's not just going to be Scorpion, who's basically only in a post-credit scene. It's either Vulture or Mysterio, and
my money's on
Mysterio. Definitely seems more likely. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing I just thought of. This will be the first MCU trilogy to be completed by one director.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, think about this. Because you had the Captain America trilogy. You know, Joe Johnston did the first film, but then the Russos came in to change it completely to a political thriller, more or less. And then you have Jon Favreau. Obviously, he did the first 2 Iron Man movies. Then Shane Black did Iron Man 3 and fucked that up. I don't like Iron Man 3. I'm sorry, people.
Thor is just all over the place.
Yeah, but I mean, Taika Waititi with Ragnarok, he took it to a completely new direction in the previous Thor movies. So this is the first time we're getting an MCU trilogy helmed by one director. And honestly, I do think a tonal shift will work in the movie's favor, but it's the same guy and it's the same writers.
It's the same guy, yeah.
that's what worries me. I I mean, we'll see how Spider-Man No Way Home goes, but in terms of my anticipation for it, the movie just has lessened the closer we've gotten to it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't have high hopes for it. I hope I'm proven wrong, but I mean, geez, when Happy Hogan is a major character in a Spider-Man movie, I question what the hell they're doing. And it's
yeah,
funny. You look at the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, and I understand why they had to cram so much in there. Like, there was no guarantee of a sequel back then in 2002, but here we are now, and we've had Spider-Man movies where Happy Hogan is a major character, and Iron Man and Doctor Strange are main characters. Like, we don't want to do Gwen Stacy or Mary Jane because that's too obvious. We've done them, so we're gonna go with Liz Allen and sort of MJ, but it's not really. It shouldn't be that
right.
complicated to make a Spider-Man movies because as far as live action films go, we've had two examples of it being done pretty goddamn well. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's such a shame.
And the problems I'm having with these movies, and it doesn't help that they've got Sony marketing them. Sony really is the worst thing to happen to Spider-Man. Like, it's so easy to throw them under the bus a lot of the time, but they really are. Like, everything that is wrong with that material in film currently, and part of the issue with these MCU Spider-Man films is the only thing that they have to identify this as its own version of Spider-Man is he's part of the MCU. Like, they have a whole
Yeah,
John Hughes thing that they could be playing up, and instead it's just he's part of the MCU.
that's all they have for this whole thing. And now it's less of he's part of the MCU, and now you're bringing everyone into the MCU. You're bringing,
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
these villains. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a mess. No matter what, this movie will be a mess.
And the main
Like
problem I
even
have,
if even if there's a complete tonal shift, and this movie is with a few jokes here and there, but it's going to be like more serious, a lot dark. It's still going to be a mess. Like that's just how this movie's wrapped. Like you can't fix this.
yeah. And the main problem I have with it is they're essentially telling us when they say like the Avengers towers in the background, and that's what makes this different is, oh, franchising. That's what makes the Spider-Man unique. And I'm sorry, but all of the Marvel movies have franchising in them. That's not a tonal setting. That's not a style. That's a marketing thing. The Marvel
Right.
movies handle that well for the most part, but like I didn't go to see Iron Man because it was part of a bunch of movies. I went to see it because it looked like a good movie. And I would be very surprised if Spider-Man No Way Home turns out to be. I mean, the sad thing is nothing will ever be the first two Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, or even
No,
into the Spider-Verse,
you
because
can't top any of those.
I just don't think we're in a time anymore where you can get movies or at least live action Spider-Man movies with that particular studio and that particular heartfelt sincerity that isn't just so focused on franchising and appealing to as many demographics as they can. And even though we've got this deal between them and Marvel, which seems like a done deal at the moment, there's still like the occasional moment where they're like, "Oh, we're probably going to break the deal." It's
Yeah.
it's just very hard for me to get excited for new Spider-Man at this particular moment. I'm still seeing it. I've still got my ticket booked. I'm sure
Right.
it'll be reasonably entertaining. I still think that Tom Holland is a fine casting decision, and I do actually think that there are some interesting dynamics they could play up. I don't think we'll get them, but I think there's some nice and sad stuff they can do if they play it well. But so much of it feels restraint from being as creatively free as it should be. Like I still feel like I'm watching something where loads of people walk into a room and said, "What's the safest decisions we can make?" So there you go. There's my rant on these MCU Spider-Man movies. You want to do yours now?
Um, you kind of said everything, but like, I mean, I'm I'm excited for this movie mostly out of curiosity as to like what is happening, like how can you do any of this together? But it's really just because like there's a little part of me that does have just the slightest amount of hope. Now, it's not enough to make me think that this will be better than Raimi's movies or Into the Spider-Verse. It's definitely not gonna top those because those movies for the most part weren't executive decisions taking place on screen. It was Sam Raimi grabbing a camera and making a damn good Spider-Man movie. Into the Spider-Verse was, taking this comic book movie formula and just making it more of a comic book and less of a movie. And that it works too. So it's just, you're never going to get that with this franchise. Even if you make it a complete tonal shift and you can throw in as many characters that we've seen before as you want, you can make it as fan servicey as you want. But it's not enough to like completely course correct this character, which does suck.
It does.
I have hope, and I want to be proven wrong. I want to go into this and come out and feel like I've learned something. And going into this compared to Homecoming and Far From Home, I have more hope for this movie than I do for those two. But at the same time, I'm also more worried because this movie just seems like it can get distracted so easily with this much going on. So
yeah. Remember in Civil War when Tony Stark tells Peter, so you're out looking for the little guy. That's what motivates you basically.
Yeah.
And then he's like, can't you just be like a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? And now we're just doing multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
What is happening?
That's how it is.
I really want to be excited for this, but I'm increasingly less and less. And it all started with the title of the first film, Spider-Man Homecoming. And I went, that is way too self-aware for a movie title. It's like Batman Returns. It doesn't make any sense. So Spider-Man Forever would have been fine. I get it. Spider-Man Forever. Yeah, I get it. Homecoming is the name of a Spider-Man story. And yeah, Homecoming does refer to an event that happens at most American high schools. I don't care. None of that is why it's called that. None of it. So it bothers me that they're that self-aware about it, and they made those trailers with, oh, we're playing up the high school stuff. And it was so obvious even then that we weren't going to get much of that. Like, we saw the same stuff over and over again. So I wasn't willing to bet that it was going to be like Spectacular Spider-Man, where Peter Parker, the high schooler, is the main character, and Spider-Man is the adventures that he goes on. It was going to be the other way around, just like everything else is. And I don't have any faith in these people to make a film that is good, unfortunately. Right. I am very petty at this point, and I think I'm allowed to be. We haven't had a good live-action Spider-Man movie since 2004. Spider-Man 2 is a really long time ago now. And the MCU, they make good movies. They make enjoyable movies. And that's great. I am a little tired of it, though. I get excited when I get to see something new. Doctor Strange was something new. And at the time, Guardians of the Galaxy was something new. Thor Ragnarok, they went to a different direction. So that was exciting. But when it's the same old shit, I'm not that excited about it anymore. Even if it's stuff like Spider-Man holding the boat together in Homecoming. It's just a Spider-Man 2 reference.
Exactly.
Like, how many times on Instagram did I have to see everyone saying, like, look, it's a reference to this? And I'm like, yeah, I know. We all got it. Like, even Michael Giacchino's score, like the main theme he did, which is the 60s theme repurposed in a more dramatic tone. Like, what identity does this version of Spider-Man have? It's just stuff we've seen before.
Exactly.
Like, look, it's Spider-Man.
And yeah, that's what's been like the connective tissue for these movies. That's what's been getting people back, is because we're seeing things we know, and just this Marvel universe, and now every Marvel universe coming in, and it's just like we're getting Daredevil maybe, and it's just there's so much going on in here, and it's frustrating because like the stuff that they could do with this movie and the stuff that like I really do like about the trailers, I hope that takes center stage, and I'm afraid it's just not.
Yeah, exactly.
So like that's just the biggest fear going in.
Yeah. It's also a shame to me that Marvel or Sony or whatever can't rely on Spider-Man to sell the movie. It's Spider-Man.
No.
He's one of the most famous characters of all time.
Literally every single time, like every single movie, you have one you have an extra Marvel character to be in this movie. In Homecoming, it was Iron Man, and Far From Home, it's Nick Fury. Now we have Doctor Strange upon possibly other Spider-Men and Daredevil and everyone and everything.
Like, I get that Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch are draws, and that's completely fine. You know, put them on the poster, but it is a little disgusting. Like, it feels like we are watching a business arrangement on screen.
Yeah.
And the main thing for me is that, like I said, it feels like two studios compromising because they don't want to piss each other off in case one of them bows out. Like, that's what it feels like to me. And I just have no interest in watching a Spider-Man movie that is just people in a room shaking hands and not pissing each other off. Can't we just get a good movie? And I would love to come back and say, oh my God, it was great. But the trailers are not indicating that for me. Like, we may come back and look at this video and go, wow, we were so wrong. I hope that's the case. I don't have any faith in that being the case, though.
Yeah.
And crap, I've forgotten the director's name.
John Watts.
Yes, John Watts. He did Cop Car. Cop Car is a good movie. It's the only other movie of his that I've seen. That's got its own style, but I'm not seeing any kind of interesting style or directorial flourish or some kind of stylistic flair to the movies.
It's because he's a yes man. He was an indie director that got to make a giant movie and make a shit ton of money, and you can't really back out of that once you're in that system.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just stuff we've kind of seen before. But yeah, it would be nice for us to come back and go like, wow, we were so wrong, and that was a really pointless rant about these Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
So, John Watts, I hope you were wrong. I hope you were right. I hope you make a good film. Right. Anything else you want to discuss?
I think that's it.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you all got some enjoyment out of that at least. And we'll try to do a No Way Home discussion once we see that. So in the meantime, take care everyone. Bye.